You know that specific smell of cheap latex and desperation? That's what hit me the moment the elevator doors slid open on the 44th floor. It was a Tuesday, a day usually reserved for code reviews and drinking enough black coffee to kill a draft horse. But today, the open plan office looked like a gender reveal party for a demon. Purple and gold balloons were bobbing against the air vents, tied to the ergonomic chairs with curling ribbon that probably cost more than the intern's hourly wage. I stood there, clutching my travel mug, a beat-up stainless steel thing that had survived 3 mergers and a hostile takeover, and just watched. My team, a group of brilliant, sleep-deprived engineers who could code a sentient AI out of a toaster and some copper wire, looked like hostages in a bank robbery where the robbers were forcing them to do the Macarena. Standing on a makeshift stage made of pallets and fake turf was Tiffany. Tiffany, the CEO's daughter-in-law. She was 32, had an MBA from a university that advertises during daytime court TV shows, and wore a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes because the buttocks had set up a perimeter defense. If you enjoy stories about corporate train wrecks and methodical revenge, go ahead and hit subscribe and give this a like, because what I'm about to tell you is the definition of damming around and finding out, and it really helps the team keep these confessions coming. Linda, Tiffany squealed, her voice hitting a frequency that I'm pretty sure is illegal in the European Union. She waved a perfectly manicured hand at me. You're just in time for the pivot. I walked over, my heels clicking on the polished concrete floor. It was a rhythmic sound. Click-clack, click-clack, the sound of a clock counting down. Oh, they didn't know it yet. The pivot, Tiffany, we're 3 weeks away from the Phase 1 launch. The infrastructure is 90% integrated. You can't pivot a battleship in a bathtub, she laughed. It was a tinkling, condescending sound like ice cubes hitting the bottom of an empty glass. Oh, Linda, you're so analog. We're not building a battleship anymore. We're building a movement. She gestured to the screen behind her. My architectural diagrams, 3 years of my life, thousands of hours of structural logic, the proprietary backbone that was currently holding up the company's entire valuation, were gone. In their place was a slide that just said Synergy 2.0 in a font that looked like it was written in crayon. I've been appointed transformation director, Tiffany announced, beaming at the room. The applause was scattered, terrified. And my first act is to democratize the leadership. Linda, you've done a sturdy job, really. But we need fresh eyes. We need digital natives. She pointed to a kid standing next to the ficus plant. Braden. Braden was 23. Braden wore loafers without socks and once asked me if SQL was the sequel to a movie he hadn't seen. Braden will be taking over as lead architect for the final rollout, Tiffany said. The silence that followed was heavy. It had mass. My lead engineer, Marcus, looked at me, his eyes wide, silently begging me to scream, to throw a chair, to do something. But I didn't scream. I'm a systems architect. I don't deal in chaos. I deal in logic gates. And the logic here was flawed, but the contract was absolute. Braden, I said, my voice dead calm. Do you know what the load balancer latency threshold is for the primary cluster? Braden blinked. Oh, we're going to move everything to the cloud, right? So 0? Right, I said, 0. I looked at Tiffany. She was glowing with the triumph of the incompetent. She thought she was clearing out the old guard. She thought she was winning. She had no idea she was pulling the pin on a grenade and tucking it into her designer handbag. So, Tiffany said, clasping her hands, I know this is a transition, Linda. We'll keep you on for 2 weeks to transfer knowledge. You can sit in the overflow cubicle near the bathrooms. It'll be quieter for you to write up the documentation for Braden. The disrespect was breathtaking. It was almost art. I set my travel mug down on the nearest desk. I reached into my purse. I didn't pull out a weapon, though in a just world I might have. I pulled out my badge. It was a heavy, magnetic key card that gave me access to the server rooms, the executive suites, and the hidden freight elevator. No need, I said. Tiffany tilted her head, like a golden retriever confused by a magic trick. Excuse me? I don't need 2 weeks, I said. I slid the badge across the table. It spun and stopped right at the edge, teetering. I resign, effective immediately. You can't just quit, Tiffany scoffed. We have a board meeting at 5 p.m. The investors are coming to see the demo. My father-in-law specifically said you needed to be there to answer the technical questions. Braden is the lead architect now, I said, smoothing down my blazer. He's a digital native. I'm sure he can explain the synergy. Linda stopped being dramatic, she snapped, her smile faltering for a microsecond. You're staying, that's an order. I looked at her. I looked at the balloons. I looked at the fear in my team's eyes. I'm not an employee anymore, Tiffany. I'm a civilian, and civilians don't take orders from transformation directors. I turned around. I could feel their eyes on my back. It felt like heat. Oh, I paused at the glass doors. Please tell your father-in-law that the 5 p.m. board meeting will be interesting. What does that mean? She demanded. I didn't answer. I just walked out. I didn't storm. I didn't slam the door. I walked with the steady, measured pace of a woman who knows exactly what time the bomb is set to go off and knows she has exactly enough time to get to a safe distance and pour a glass of wine. As I stepped into the elevator, I checked my watch. 9:15 a.m. The Atlas protocol, my life's work, had a heartbeat, and I had just stopped the pacemaker. Now, we just had to wait for the patient to realize they were dead. There is a specific kind of silence that exists in the suburbs of Northern Virginia at 11 o'clock a.m. on a Tuesday. It's the silence of leaf blowers paused for lunch and Amazon delivery trucks idling at stop signs. It was a stark, beautiful contrast to the digital inferno I knew was currently raging 20 miles away in Tyson's Corner. I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the hum of my engine and the settling of my nervous system. When I pulled into my driveway, I didn't go inside immediately. I stood by my hydrangea bushes. They were wilting slightly. I grabbed the hose. The cool water misting over the leaves felt like a baptism. I was washing away 3 years of corporate jargon, 3 years of circling back, and 3 years of fixing mistakes made by men who made triple my salary. My phone, which I had left on the passenger seat of my car, was lighting up like a disco floor. I didn't need to look at it to know what was happening. I could see the sequence of events in my mind like a compiled script. First, the gossip mill would churn. The engineers, Marcus, Sarah, David, be in a panic huddle in the break room. They knew. They were the only ones who actually understood the architecture. They knew that the Atlas system wasn't just a pile of code. It was a living ecosystem that required a specific biometric key to authorize changes. My key. By 10:30 a.m., Braden would have tried to log into the master admin console to change the color scheme for his Synergy presentation. He would have been met with a grayed-out screen. He wouldn't panic yet. He's young. He assumes every problem can be solved by refreshing the browser or asking ChatGPT. By 11 o'clock a.m., Tiffany would be getting annoyed. She'd be pacing around her office, demanding to know why the dashboard isn't popping. She'd tell Braden to just call Linda, and that's when the terror would start to creep in. I walked into my kitchen and made a sandwich. Turkey, Swiss, extra heavy on the mustard. I sat at my granite island and finally looked at my phone. 47 missed calls, 12 voicemails, a wall of text messages that looked like the frantic scribblings of a person buried alive. From Marcus, lead engineer, Linda, please pick up. Braden is trying to chmod the root directory. I can't stop him. He has admin privileges but no architectural clearance. It's going to trigger the lockout. From Tiffany, Linda, this is unprofessional. Pick up your phone. Need the password for the demo environment. Now. From Tiffany, 10 minutes later, I'm writing you up for insubordination. I chuckled. The sandwich tasted incredible. Writing up a non-employee for insubordination was exactly the kind of logic I expected from her. I opened my laptop, my personal MacBook, not the company-issued brick I'd left on the desk, and logged into my private email server. I checked the sent folder. There it was. The resignation email. But it wasn't sent to HR. It wasn't sent to Tiffany. It was sent to a secure, encrypted escrow service that timestamped it and forwarded it to the board of directors' legal counsel, the external auditors, and the CEO's executive assistant. Timestamp, 6:59 a.m. 2 hours before Tiffany's little coronation ceremony. 2 hours before she fired me slash demoted me slash reassigned me. Why did this matter? Because in the state of Virginia, and specifically within the ironclad clauses of the contract I wrote, yes, I wrote the technical scope of work, not legal, the timing of departure determined the custody of the intellectual property. If I had quit after she reassigned the project, it could be argued I was abandoning my post. But I had resigned before. I had resigned while I was still the sole authorized architect. I took a bite of a pickle. A jarring, sour crunch. I imagined HR frantically searching their inboxes. We don't have a resignation letter, the HR director would be saying, wiping sweat from her upper lip. Technically, she just walked out. Is that job abandonment? They were focusing on the wrong things. They were worried about employment law. They should have been worrying about copyright law. The phone rang again. It was the main office line. I let it ring. Then a text from Braden. From Braden, hey Linda, hope good. Quick Q, what's the login for the deep storage node? It's asking for 64 char key. Lol, thanks, lol, I whispered to the empty kitchen. I didn't reply, I wasn't being petty. Well, maybe 10% petty, but 90% of this was strategic. Any response from me could be construed as consulting work. If I helped them, even once, even with a single password, I would re-establish the employment link. I would validate their mess. Silence was my shield. Silence was my sword. I washed my plate. I dried it. I put it away. It was 1 o'clock p.m., 4 hours until the board meeting. 4 hours until the CEO, Richard, landed from his golf trip in Scotland. 4 hours until the $200 million question was asked, and the answer was a 404 error. I went to the living room and opened a book. A murder mystery. It felt appropriate. Except in my version, the body was a server farm, and the weapon was a clause on page 143. Back at the glass tower, the air conditioning was set to 68 degrees, but Gavin, the chief technology officer, was sweating through his bespoke Italian suit. Gavin was a man who had failed upward with the aerodynamic efficiency of a helium balloon. He knew buzzwords. He knew how to order expensive scotch. He did not, however, know how to build a distributed cloud architecture. I wasn't there, but I know exactly what was happening. I had worked with these people for 3 years. I knew their panic responses like I knew my own social security number. Gavin would be standing behind Braden's chair. Braden's chill vibes would have evaporated about an hour ago. Just bypass the authentication, Gavin would be barking, staring at a screen filled with cascading red text. We have the investor keys. Use the investor keys. I tried. Braden's voice would be cracking. It says invalid architectural sign-off. It says the system is in orphan mode. Orphan mode, Tiffany would snap, pacing the room. She'd have her phone in one hand, probably texting her husband, the CEO's son, to complain that I was being difficult. What the hell is orphan mode? Is that a bug? It's not a bug, Marcus, my lead engineer would finally say. Marcus was a good man, but he had a mortgage and twins in college. He didn't have the luxury of burning bridges. He was sitting in the corner, his head in his hands. It's a feature. Linda built it in year one. It prevents unauthorized takeovers. If the primary architect account goes inactive without a formal handover protocol, the system assumes a hostility event. A hostility event? Tiffany laughed, but it was a dry, jagged sound. I didn't attack the server. I just promoted a new lead. It's a staffing change, not a cyber attack. The system doesn't know the difference. Marcus would say quietly. To the kernel, a reassignment without the architect's private key looks exactly like a hacker trying to hijack the core. Well, override it, Tiffany screamed. You're the CTO, Gavin, override her. This is the part I relish most. The moment where titles meet reality. Gavin had the title. He had the salary. He had the corner office. But in the world of systems architecture, authority isn't granted by HR. It's granted by encryption. I can't, Gavin would admit, his voice small. She never transferred root access. We thought we assumed because she was quiet that she was just maintaining the legacy code. She locked us out. Tiffany's eyes went wide. She sabotaged the company? No, Marcus would correct her, and I love him for this, even if I never hear him say it. She didn't sabotage anything. The system is protecting itself. It's doing exactly what she programmed it to do. It's waiting for the architect. Call her again, Tiffany shrieked. I did, Gavin said, straight to voicemail. Send a courier to her house. She lives in a gated community, Marcus lied. I don't, but Marcus knows I hate unannounced visitors. At 2:30 p.m., the first cracks in the facade appeared outside the IT department. The marketing team couldn't update the website. The sales team couldn't access the CRM. The internal chat servers started to lag. Atlas Protocol wasn't just the new project. It was the spine, and I had removed the vertebrae. Tiffany stormed out of the server room. I'm calling my father-in-law. Richard will fix this. He'll sue her into the ground. She'll be living in a cardboard box by Friday. She dialed Richard. Richard, the CEO, who was currently at 30,000 feet flying back on the corporate jet for the big meeting. I imagine the conversation was short. Richard, Linda has locked the system. She's holding us hostage. And Richard, who despite his nepotism actually understood the bottom line, would ask one question. Did you fire her? I repurposed her role. To streamline, did you fire her? She walked out. She quit. When this morning, right before the meeting, Richard would go silent. He knew I didn't do drama. If I walked out, the building was already on fire. Fix it, Richard would say, his voice cold. If the screens are blank when the investors walk in at 5 o'clock, Tiffany, being family, won't save you. Back in the server room, Braden was staring at the screen. The red text had changed. It was no longer scrolling. It was a single, static prompt. System lockdown imminent. Enter architect credentials or system will revert to base state in 120 minutes. What's base state? Braden whispered. Marcus looked up, his face pale. Factory settings. Empty. Blank slate. It deletes the data? No, Marcus said. It encrypts it and throws away the key. The clock on the wall ticked. 2:45 p.m. I turned the page of my book. The detective had just found a clue, a missing button. How trivial. The legal department was on the 12th floor. It smelled like mahogany and fear. At 4 p.m., 1 hour before the meeting, the head of legal, a shark named Sterling who wore suspenders unironically, screaming at 3 junior associates. Find the breach of contract. Sterling roared. She's an at-will employee. She has a fiduciary duty. If she maliciously encumbered company assets, we can have the sheriff drag her in here in handcuffs. They were tearing through my personnel file. They were reading my NDAs. They were looking for the standard boilerplate text that says everything you make belongs to us. But they were looking at the employment contract. They weren't looking at the Project Atlas IP agreement. See, 3 years ago, when the company was bleeding cash and their old system crashed for 3 days straight, they begged me to fix it. I was a consultant then. I wasn't desperate, they were, so I wrote the terms. When they hired me full-time later, they were so relieved to have the system stable, they just attached my original consultancy IP agreement to my employment contract as an addendum. They didn't read it. They just signed it, found it, a junior lawyer shouted. He was holding a document, trembling. Addendum B, the Atlas Development Framework. Read it, Sterling snapped. Clause 11.7, subsection C, the junior lawyer read, his voice wavering. In the event of project reassignment, demotion, or termination of the primary architect without a 60-day transitional period and written architectural sign-off. Get to the point. All external synchronization systems will automatically execute a protective freeze protocol. The room went silent. Protective freeze? Sterling whispered. What does that mean? It gets worse, the junior lawyer said. Subsection D. This protocol is designed to prevent intellectual property theft by unauthorized third parties. The system will revert to independent audit mode until the primary architect provides biometric unlocking. She licensed it to us, Sterling realized, sinking into his leather chair. She didn't sell it. She built it as a licensed tool, and the license is conditional on her supervision. Wait, Tiffany said. She had barged into the legal office, her mascara slightly smudged, so we just hire her back, offer her a bonus, double her salary, get her on the phone and tell her she can have the corner office. Sterling looked at Tiffany with pure loathing. It's not about the money, you idiot. Look at the timestamp on the lockout. They looked at the screen. The system had locked down at 9 a.m. She triggered this the second you announced the intern, Sterling said. She didn't do it from a keyboard. It was an automated dead man switch. If her badge didn't scan at the server room door by 12 p.m., the system assumed she was gone. So just hack it, Tiffany screamed. We can't, Sterling said. It's encrypted with a 256-bit key that rotates every minute. And legally, if we try to break the encryption, we are violating the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. She could sue us for triple damages. We're talking federal court. We're talking the SEC investigating why we're using unlicensed software to run our financials. 4:45 p.m. In the boardroom on the 50th floor, the waiters were pouring sparkling water. The expensive catered sandwiches were arranged on silver platters. The screens at the front of the room were gigantic, high-definition monsters. Currently, they were displaying a pulsating red logo, not the company logo, a lock icon, and underneath, in small, polite text, Contact Administrator. License suspended. Braden was in the boardroom, trying to connect his laptop to the HDMI, hoping that maybe, just maybe, if he ignored the server and just showed a PowerPoint, nobody would notice the live system was dead. It's just a glitch, Braden was muttering to the empty chairs. I'll just explain the vision. The elevator dinged. The investors were here. The sharks from the venture capital firm. The ones who looked at balance sheets like they were restaurant menus. They walked in, suits sharp, eyes cold. Where's Richard? The lead investor, a man named Mr. Henderson, asked. He's landing, Tiffany said, stepping forward, forcing a smile that looked like a rictus of pain. Welcome, I'm Tiffany, the new transformation director. We have such an exciting pivot to show you today. Mr. Henderson looked at the red screen. He looked at Tiffany. He looked at Braden, who was visibly vibrating. Why does the screen say license suspended? Henderson asked. Oh, that, Tiffany laughed. Technical hiccup. Software update. You know how technology is? I do know how technology is, Henderson said dryly. And I know that usually means you didn't pay the bill. We paid. Tiffany said, we own it. Actually, a voice came from the doorway. It wasn't me. It was Sterling, the lawyer. He looked defeated. We need to reschedule, Sterling said. We have a compliance issue regarding the architecture. Where is Linda? Henderson asked. He knew my name. I had briefed him 3 months ago. He liked me because I didn't use buzzwords. Linda is no longer with the organization, Tiffany said quickly. Henderson's eyes narrowed. He looked at the locked screen. He connected the dots instantly. You fired the architect, Henderson said, and she took the keys. She can't do that, Tiffany insisted. If she's smart, Henderson said, sitting down and crossing his legs, she already did. And if she's the one who built this, I'm betting she's smart. He looked at his watch. I'll wait for Richard. This should be entertaining. The doors to the boardroom flew open with enough force to rattle the windows. Richard, the CEO, strode in. He was wearing a windbreaker from St. Andrews and a look that could peel paint off a wall. He had clearly run from the tarmac to the car to the elevator. What, Richard hissed, is happening? The room was silent. The investors were watching with the detached amusement of Romans at the Colosseum. Tiffany was standing near the whiteboard, looking small. Braden was practically merging with the drywall. Richard, Tiffany started, her voice shrill, it's sabotage. Linda planted a virus. She locked us out right before the demo to humiliate us. Richard didn't look at her. He looked at the red screen. License suspended. He turned to Sterling. Is it true? Did she sabotage us? Sterling cleared his throat. He held up a file folder. Technically, sir, no. The system reverted to its default legal state. Linda's personal consultancy owns the root architecture. We had a license to use it as long as she was the supervising officer. When her employment terminated without a transition agreement, the license expired. Instantly, but she quit, Tiffany yelled. She walked out on us. Actually, Sterling said, opening the folder. My team just found this. It was delivered to my inbox via secured escrow at 6:59 a.m. this morning. It placed a single piece of paper on the mahogany table. Her resignation letter, Sterling said, dated and timestamped 2 hours before you announced the reorganization. Richard picked up the paper. His hands were shaking slightly. She didn't walk out in a huff, Richard whispered, reading the text. She resigned because she knew you were going to replace her. I didn't tell her, Tiffany protested. It was a surprise. Linda doesn't like surprises, Richard said. Linda hears everything. He looked at the timestamp. Then he looked at his daughter-in-law. You tried to big league her, Richard said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You tried to take a 3-year project, a project worth $200 million to this firm and hand it to? He gestured vaguely at Braden, to an intern who isn't wearing socks. I was disrupting the paradigm. Tiffany cried. You disrupted our liquidity, Richard roared. He slammed his hand on the table. The water glasses jumped. Mr. Henderson, the investor, cleared his throat. Richard, am I to understand that the proprietary tech we are supposed to be investing in is not actually owned by this company? Richard turned to the investors. The color drained from his face. It's a complex IP structure. We can resolve it. We just need to get Linda back to the table. And where is she? Henderson asked. She's unavailable, Richard said. She's at home. Tiffany sneered, probably laughing at us. No, Henderson said, looking at his phone. He held it up. She's not at home. On Henderson's phone screen was a LinkedIn notification, a press release. Apex Systems welcomes new chief systems strategist. There was a photo. It was me. A professional headshot I had taken 2 years ago. I looked calm, competent. Apex, Richard choked out. Our competitor? Read the subheadline, Henderson said. Richard leaned in. Apex Systems secures exclusive licensing rights to the next-generation Titan infrastructure, formerly known as Atlas, architected by Linda R. Connors. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the projector fan, still displaying the red lock icon. She sold it, Sterling whispered. She resigned. The license reverted to her. And she sold it to Apex. In what, 6 hours? She didn't sell it in 6 hours, Richard said, collapsing into a chair. She's been planning this. She knew Tiffany was coming for her. She had the deal ready. He looked at Tiffany. The look wasn't anger anymore, it was disgust. You didn't just lose us the project, Richard said. You handed our entire infrastructure to our biggest rival. You armed the enemy. Tiffany started to cry. But family? Get out, Richard said. Dad, get out. Tiffany ran out of the room. Braden followed her, clutching his laptop like a life raft. Richard looked at the investors. Gentlemen, I assume the check is not coming today. Henderson stood up. He buttoned his jacket. Richard, the check isn't coming at all. We invest in stability. And frankly, we're going to call Apex. It sounds like they have a hell of a new system coming online. They walked out. Richard was left alone in the boardroom with Sterling and the red screen. License suspended. And 20 miles away, I turned the page of my book. The detective had solved the murder. It was the butler, but he made it look like an accident. The next morning, the office was a ghost town. The balloons were gone. The Synergy banner was in the trash. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard about it. My phone was finally silent. I had blocked every number associated with the company except for one, Richard's personal cell. I knew he would call. He had to. At 10 o'clock a.m., my phone buzzed. Richard, CEO. I let it ring 3 times, then I picked up. Hello, Richard, Linda. His voice sounded like he had aged 10 years in 12 hours. We need to talk. I'm afraid I'm under a strict NDA with my new employer, I said pleasantly. I can't discuss proprietary technology. Proprietary? He let out a strangled laugh. Linda, you gutted us. The servers are bricks. The sales team is using Excel spreadsheets on their personal laptops. We're bleeding out. That sounds like a transformation, I said. Isn't that what Tiffany wanted? Tiffany is gone, Richard said. I fired her this morning. Braden too. Gavin is on probation. It's a bloodbath, Linda. Are you happy? Happiness isn't a metric I track, Richard. I track efficiency. And Tiffany was inefficient. Linda, please, come back. We'll match Apex's offer. We'll double it. We'll give you equity. Just unlock the system. I can't, I said. And this is the part you need to understand, Richard. I didn't lock it to be mean. I locked it because I legally had to. Once I resigned, I was no longer an authorized agent of the company. If I had left the system open, I would have been liable for any data breaches. I protected you by locking it. Bullshit, Richard snapped. You protected yourself. You took the IP. Read the contract, Richard. Clause 11.7. The Atlas framework was licensed non-exclusively to the company, contingent on my employment. It's the same clause I used when I worked as an outside consultant. Your legal team never asked me to remove it when I went full-time. They were too busy checking my background for felonies. There was a long silence on the line. I could hear him breathing. I could hear the sound of a company dying. Apex, Richard said. How long have you been talking to them? Since the day Tiffany asked me to print out my code so she could read it on the plane, I said. That was 3 months ago. I knew then, someone who asks to print code isn't trying to understand it. They're trying to weigh it. They're looking for a reason to replace the expensive architect with a cheap mechanic, so you set the trap. I built a safety net, Richard. You're the one who pushed me off the ledge. You can't be mad that I didn't hit the ground. We're going to sue, Richard said, but there was no fire in it. We'll claim corporate espionage. Bad faith. Go ahead, I said. My resignation is time-stamped. My IP ownership is registered. And Apex has a legal team that makes Sterling look like a traffic court defender. Do you really want to spend the next 5 years in discovery, explaining to your shareholders why you let your daughter-in-law play CEO with the company's crown jewels? Richard sighed. It was a heavy, defeated sound. What do you want, Linda? I don't want anything, I said. I already have what I want. A job where the CTO knows what a load balancer is. A salary that reflects my value. And a boss who doesn't hire family members to fix things that aren't broken. You're cold, Richard said. I'm an architect, I replied. Structures don't care about feelings, they care about physics. If you remove the load-bearing wall, the roof collapses. I was the wall, Richard. You grabbed the sledgehammer. I hung up. I poured myself another cup of coffee. It was good coffee, not the sludge from the office break room. I had one more loose end to tie up. I opened my laptop. I logged into the Atlas remote admin panel one last time, not to unlock it, oh no, but to send a message. I typed a single command. Display message, system migrated. Good luck with the Excel sheets. I hit enter, and then I deleted my admin key permanently. The bridge wasn't just burned. I had nuked the river. The fallout was swift, brutal, and public. In the tech world, secrets don't stay secret for long, especially when they involve a $200 million deal evaporating into thin air. By Wednesday afternoon, the industry blogs picked it up. TechCrunch ran the headline, "The Billion-Dollar Blunder, How Nepotism Sank a Virginia Tech Giant." They didn't name me explicitly in the negative press, which was nice. I was just the senior architect. Tiffany, however, was named. There were pictures of her Synergy presentation. Someone leaked the slide with the crayon font. It became a meme within hours. Synergy 2.0 became shorthand for "I have no idea what I'm doing." My old company's stock dipped 12% by Thursday. The investors who walked out, Henderson's firm, publicly announced they were reevaluating their portfolio in the sector. That's corporate speak for we wouldn't touch that company with a 10-foot pole wrapped in hazmat tape. Meanwhile, at Apex Systems, my welcome was warmer. I walked into the Apex headquarters on Friday. It was everything my old office wasn't. Quiet, focused, the engineers looked well-rested. The CEO of Apex, a woman named Alina who had actually written code in the 90s, met me in the lobby. "Linda," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "Welcome aboard, and thank you for the gift. The infrastructure is solid," I said. "It just needs a new home." "Oh, I don't mean the code," Alina smiled. "I mean the market share. We've picked up 3 of your old firm's biggest clients since Tuesday. They called us screaming, said their systems were down and they couldn't get a straight answer from anyone over there. They asked if we had a solution." "And what did you tell them?" "We told them we just hired the woman who built the solution," Alina said. "They signed 5-year contracts immediately." We walked to my new office. It had a window. Real view, not just a view of the adjacent parking garage. "By the way," Alina said, handing me a tablet. "Legal wanted you to see this, just to put your mind at ease." It was a letter from my old firm's lawyers, a cease and desist. "Don't worry," Alina said, seeing my expression. "Look at the reply our general counsel sent." I scrolled down. The reply was one sentence. "Dear Sterling, please refer to the attached timestamp resignation and IP Addendum B. If you proceed with litigation, we will be forced to subpoena the internal communications regarding the qualifications of the transformation director. Govern yourselves accordingly." "They dropped it," Alina said. "Withdrawn as of this morning." I sat in my new chair. It was comfortable. "The system they have," I asked. "The old one, is it truly dead?" "They're trying to rebuild it from the backups," Alina said. "But without the architectural key, the data is unstructured. It's like trying to assemble a puzzle in the dark and all the pieces are blank. They'll be operational again in maybe 6 months. But by then we'll have the market. 6 months. In tech, 6 months is a geologic era. They brought it on themselves," Alina said, leaning against the doorframe. "You don't fire the pilot in midair because you want your niece to fly the plane." "No," I agreed, "you don't." I turned on my new computer. It booted up instantly. No red screens. No locks, just a clean, open terminal waiting for commands. I cracked my knuckles. "Ready to work?" Alina asked. "I've been ready for 3 days," I said. "Let's build something they can't steal." 2 weeks later, the dust hadn't settled. It had turned into mud. I was at the grocery store buying organic kale because I could afford it now without wincing when I ran into Marcus, my old lead engineer. He looked better. He wasn't wearing a tie. "Linda," he said, almost dropping his basket. "Jesus, I feel like I'm seeing a ghost." "Hello, Marcus, how is the transition going?" He laughed. "I quit on Monday. Apex made me an offer. I start next week. Did you know about that?" "I might have mentioned your name to Alina," I admitted. "I need a lead engineer who knows how to handle a crisis." "Thank you," he said earnestly. "Seriously. It's like a morgue over there, Linda. Richard is walking around like a zombie. The board is talking about a vote of no confidence." "And Tiffany?" I asked. I couldn't help myself. "Oh, that's the best part," Marcus grinned. "She's not just fired. She's socially radioactive. You know the charity gala next month, the one she's been planning all year? The board removed her as chair. Said it was bad optics to have her representing the company." Ouch. "And her husband, the CEO's son, he moved into a hotel. Rumor is he's furious she cost him his inheritance." It was petty, I know. But hearing that gave me a warm, fuzzy feeling. It wasn't just business anymore, it was karma. "They tried to unlock the servers with a brute force attack last week," Marcus whispered, leaning in over the kale. "Gavin's idea. It triggered the final failsafe." "The data wipe?" I asked. "Yep. All the historical logs, gone, poof. They're running the entire billing department off paper receipts from 2019. Marcus shook his head. "They keep asking if anyone knows your password. Richard actually asked me if I thought you'd used your dog's name." "I don't have a dog," I said. "I know, I told him that." He looked like he was going to cry. When I got home, there was one final voicemail on my blocked list. It had slipped through because it came from a number I didn't recognize. a prepaid burner phone. Maybe it was Tiffany, her voice was slurred. Wine, definitely wine. Linda, it's Tiffany. Look, I know we got off on the wrong foot, but you have to help me. Richard cut me off. Todd is threatening divorce. Everyone is laughing at me, Linda. They're making memes. Me, a meme. Just give me the code, please. I'll tell them I found it. I'll tell them I hacked it. Just let me have this win, please. I'm begging you. The message ended with a sob. I stared at the phone. Younger version of me might have felt pity. A younger version of me might have thought she's learned her lesson. But I wasn't young. I was 45. I was tired, and I remembered the balloons. I remembered the overflow cubicle near the bathrooms. I remembered the arrogance of a woman who thought my expertise was an accessory she could just try on. I didn't delete the message. I saved it. I saved it right next to the timestamped resignation letter. Evidence, just in case. And I blocked the number. There are no codes for undoing stupidity. There is no patch for arrogance. You have to crash and you have to burn. The final scene of this tragedy played out in a room I wasn't even in. It was 6 p.m. on a Friday. Richard sat in his office. My old office was visible through the glass partition. It was dark. The desk was empty. The chair, my ergonomic chair that I had fought for 3 years to get budget approval for, was pushed in neatly. I know this because Marcus told me. He had gone back to pick up his personal effects. He said Richard was just sitting there, staring at my empty desk. On his own desk was the quarterly report. It was a disaster. Revenue down 40%. Client retention down 60%. Legal fees up 300%. The Atlas project was dead. They had officially scrapped it that morning. They were going to buy a generic, off-the-shelf software solution from Oracle. It would cost them 10 times as much and do half the work. It was a defeat so total it was almost elegant. Richard looked up as Marcus walked past. She planned it, Richard said, his voice hollow. She planned it all. No, sir, Marcus said, pausing at the door with his box of belongings. She didn't plan to destroy you. She planned to survive you. You just happened to be standing in the way. Richard didn't answer, just looked back at the empty chair. As for me, I was sitting on my patio. The sun was setting over Virginia, turning the sky a bruised purple. I had a glass of expensive Cabernet in one hand. On the table, my iPad was propped up. I wasn't looking at code. I wasn't looking at architectural diagrams. I was watching a compilation of Danny DeVito eating hard-boiled eggs on Always Sunny. I don't know why, it just made me laugh. It was absurd. It was chaotic. It was the exact opposite of the structured, rigid world I lived in. I took a sip of wine. 3 years they called me quiet. 3 years they called me reliable, which is corporate speak for taken for granted. They thought because I didn't shout, I didn't bite. They thought because I was a middle-aged woman in a cardigan, I was part of the furniture. They forgot that the architect knows where the load-bearing walls are. They forgot that the person who builds the house knows exactly how to bring it down. I tapped the screen. Danny DeVito offered someone an egg in this trying time. I smiled. No thanks, Danny, I whispered. I'm full. My phone buzzed. A notification from Apex. A new project invite. Project Titan, lead architect L. Connors. I picked up the phone. I accepted the invite. I drank my wine. We're all healed. Funny how the people who contribute the least always feel entitled to the most. They thought Linda would just walk away quietly, but some systems aren't built to be stolen. You can't strip years of work from someone and expect no consequences, especially when you never understood how the machine runs. The daughter-in-law wanted a title. Linda built the foundation, and when it all collapsed, she didn't even have to raise her voice. Thanks for watching. Folks, see you in the next one. I knew the end was near when I found myself calculating the trajectory of a heavy crystal paperweight into the skull of a 28-year-old man named Bradford. Bradford was our new COO. He was also the CEO's son, a man who thought synergy was a verb, and whose only qualification for running a multimillion-dollar strategic accounts firm in Las Vegas was that he once organized a frat party that didn't get raided by the cops. I'm Vivian. I'm 45, I run on espresso and spite, and for the last 5 years, I have been the structural integrity of Apex Strategy Group. You know that load-bearing wall in a house that, if removed, causes the roof to collapse and kill everyone inside? That's me. I'm the wall. And Bradford was currently trying to hang a velvet painting of himself on me using a sledgehammer. Vivian, we need to talk about your energy, Bradford said. Leaning back in a Herman Miller chair, he didn't know how to adjust, creating a squeaking noise that sounded like a dying mouse. He was wearing a vest that cost more than my first car and had a haircut that screamed I sue people for sport. You're just not radiating that growth mindset we need for Q3. My dad says you're vital, but honestly, I see a lot of legacy thinking. Legacy thinking. That's corporate speak for you're older than me. You actually know how the sausage is made, and you refuse to use TikTok to recruit account managers. I stared at him. I didn't blink. I've stared down casino magnates who were losing $40 million a night and cartel lawyers trying to legitimize cash flows through shell companies. A nepotism baby with a shiny MBA wasn't going to make me flinch. Bradford, I said, my voice smooth like concrete pouring into a grave. I just saved the monolith account. You know, the one that pays for the leased Porsche you parked in the handicap spot downstairs? I haven't taken a vacation day since 2019. My energy is focused on keeping the ship from hitting the iceberg you seem intent on steering us toward. He waved a hand dismissively, like he was shooing away a fly or a pesky labor law. Relax, Vive, you're so intense. Look, take a break. Seriously. Go eat pasta in Italy or whatever women your age do to find themselves. We've got this covered. I've got some frat buddies coming in to shadow the ops team. Fresh eyes, you know? I felt a vein in my forehead throb. It had its own pulse, a little drumbeat of rage. I needed out. Not forever, just long enough to remember what oxygen tasted like without the flavor of recycled air conditioning and desperation. Listen, before I tell you how I burned this place to the ground using nothing but a cell phone and a glass of Pinot Grigio, do me a favor. If you're enjoying the incoming wreckage of a rich kid's ego, hit subscribe and maybe drop a like and comment. It fuels my cold, dead heart, so I booked the trip. The Amalfi Coast, 3 weeks. Unheard of in my industry. In Vegas, if you leave your desk for lunch, someone tries to steal your client list. Leaving the country was basically inviting a coup, but I was tired. My bones felt like they were made of lead pipes. The farewell happy hour was a joke. It was held in the break room, catered by a sandwich shop that I'm pretty sure washes their lettuce in tap water from the erratic toilets next door. Bradford stood on a chair to make a speech. We're going to Miss Vivian, he announced, holding a lukewarm beer. But let's be real, guys. Sometimes, you gotta trim the fat to let the muscle grow. We need speed. We need agility. We don't need dead weight and leadership. The room went silent. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator. My team, people I had trained, people I had shielded from the CEO's tantrums, people whose mortgages were paid because I closed deals at 3 a.m. on Christmas Eve, looked at the floor. They knew. They knew he was insulting me to my face, and they were too terrified of the Prince Regent to say a word. Dead weight, I repeated, swirling my Diet Coke. It's a metaphor, Vive. Don't get sensitive, Bradford laughed, hopping down. Just enjoy your pasta. Leave the heavy lifting to the big dogs. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the insecurity masked by cologne and teeth-whitening strips. I saw a boy playing business with his daddy's money, and I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't sadness, wasn't even anger, really. It was the click of a safety being disengaged. You're right, Bradford, I said, placing my unfinished drink on the table. I should let the big dogs eat. I walked out of that office without clearing my browser history or saying goodbye. I left my laptop on the desk. I left my files locked. As I walked to the elevator, the air felt different. It was the calm before a storm, but I wasn't the one who was going to get wet. I had a plane to catch. And as I descended to the lobby, leaving the neon glow of the strip behind me, I had a strange premonition that when I came back, the locks on the doors would be changed, or I'd own the building. I just didn't know it would happen so fast. The Amalfi Coast smells like lemons and money. It's a scent that screams, your problems are too poor to find you here. I was 3 days in, sitting on a terrace that hung off the side of a cliff like a suicidal goat, sipping a glass of wine that cost more than Bradford's education. For the first 48 hours, I had the phantom vibration syndrome. I kept reaching for my phone, expecting a crisis. Did the merger go through? Did the SEC audit the Henderson account? Did Bradford accidentally reply all with a dick pic? But the phone was silent. It was unnerving. In my line of work, silence isn't peace, it's an ambush. On the third day, the phone finally rang. I looked at the screen. Apex HQ Bradford. I debated letting it go to voicemail. I was watching the sunset bleed purple and orange into the Tyrrhenian Sea. I didn't want to hear his nasal whine, but old habits die harder than cockroaches in a nuclear winter. I picked up. Vivian, Bradford's voice came through, choppy and tinny. He sounded breathless, like he'd just run up a flight of stairs or finished embezzling funds. Bradford, I said, keeping my eyes on a yacht drifting in the distance. I'm on vacation. Unless the building is on fire, this counts as billable consulting hours. Yeah, about that, he said. There was a pause. I heard papers shuffling. We've been reviewing the headcount, the direction of the firm, and honestly, it's not working out. I took a sip of wine. What's not working out, Bradford? The fact that I do all the work and you take all the credit? See? That's the attitude. It's toxic, Vive. It's bad for the culture. We want a culture of yes, and you're a culture of let's check the compliance laws first. He let out a short, nervous laugh. Anyway, Dad and I talked. We're terminating your contract, effective immediately. Cause, insubordination, and let's call it performance stagnation. I froze, not out of fear, out of sheer awe at the audacity. Performance stagnation? I brought in $12 million last quarter, Bradford. You brought in a foosball table. Don't need lazy people, Vivian, he snapped, his voice dropping the fake niceness. We need grinders. You're on a beach. We're here working. That says everything. Don't bother coming back. We'll mail you your personal effects. Anything on the company laptop is ours. Security has been notified. The line went dead. He hung up on me. He fired me over the phone while I was 6,000 miles away calling me. A woman who missed her own mother's hip surgery to close the impossible Venetti deal lazy? I lowered the phone. I looked at the black screen. I should have been crying. I should have been screaming. I should have been throwing the expensive crystal glass against the ancient stone wall, but I felt cold. I felt the kind of cold that burns. It was a clarity so sharp it could cut diamonds. Rough call, the voice came from the table next to mine. I turned, sitting there. Looking like he had been sculpted out of olive wood and bespoke tailoring, was Dante Morty. If you work in high-stakes corporate strategy in Nevada, you know Dante. He's the CEO of Obsidian Global, my firm's biggest, fiercest, and most ruthless competitor. Dante was the shark that swam in the deep water while Bradford was playing with rubber ducks in the bathtub. We had been rivals for a decade. We had stolen clients from each other, blocked each other's acquisitions, and engaged in a silent war of attrition that would make the Cold War look like a pillow fight. He was wearing linen. He was drinking espresso. He looked amused. "You have no idea," I said, placing my phone on the table face down. "Just got fired by a child wearing a vest." Dante smiled. It wasn't a predatory smile. It was the smile of a chess player who just watched his opponent blunder their queen. He signaled the waiter for another glass. "Bradford?" Dante asked. He knew the players. "Bradford," I confirmed. "Apparently I'm dead weight and lazy." Dante laughed. It was a rich, deep sound that startled a seagull nearby. "Lazy, you? Vivian, you're the only reason I haven't bought that company and turned it into a parking lot for my employees. I've been trying to poach you for 7 years." "I know," I said. "I have the emails." "And now," Dante said, leaning forward, his eyes locking onto mine, "you're a free agent in Italy, sitting next to me." "Coincidence?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Fate," he countered. "Or maybe I have a better travel agent. The question is, Vivian, are you going to go home and cry, or are you going to help me destroy them?" I looked at the wine. I looked at the sunset. I thought about Bradford's smug voice calling me lazy. I thought about the 5 years of missed birthdays, the stress ulcers, the loyalty I had poured into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. I picked up my glass and clinked it against his. "I don't want to just destroy them, Dante," I whispered, and the ocean breeze carried my voice like a curse. "I want to bury them." I've been waiting for this call. To understand why Dante Morty was sitting next to me on an Italian cliffside, offering me the nuclear codes to my former employer's destruction, you have to go back 2 years. Las Vegas is a small town draped in neon camouflage. Everyone knows everyone's dirt. 2 years ago, Obsidian Global, Dante's firm, was facing a crisis that would have vaporized a lesser company. One of his junior partners had gone rogue, embezzling client funds to cover a gambling addiction that spiraled into the 7 figures. The press caught wind of it. The rumors were starting to swirl like toilet water. My boss at the time, Bradford's father, the original tyrant, wanted me to leak the story. He wanted me to go to the Review Journal and hand them the smoking gun that would sink Dante. It was the smart business move. It would have eliminated our biggest competitor overnight. But I didn't do it. I operate on a code. It's a rusty, beat-up code, but it's mine. You beat the competition because you're better, not because you shank them in the alley while they're tying their shoes. Plus, I knew Dante. I knew he was honorable, even if he was ruthless. Didn't know about the embezzlement. He was being blindsided. So I called him, 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. "Dante," I had said, "check your ledger for the Henderson account. Look for transfers to a shell corp in the Caymans, and fire your VP of Finance before 6 a.m. or you're going to prison." There was silence on the line. Then a quiet, "Why are you telling me this, Vivian?" "Because I want to beat you fair and square, Morty. Not because your staff is incompetent." He fixed it. He fired the guy, reimbursed the funds from his own pocket before anyone noticed, and the story died before it was born. He saved his company, and he never forgot. He sent me a bottle of vintage scotch that cost more than my car with a note, "Name your price." Anytime, I never cashed it in. Until now. Back in Amalfi, Dante watched me over the rim of his espresso cup. The sea below us was turning a deep, bruised purple. "You remember the offer I made you that night?" Dante asked quietly. "VP of Strategy. Equity partner. Full autonomy." "I remember," I said. "I declined. I told you I was loyal." "Loyalty?" Dante spat the word out like a grape seed. "Loyalty is a currency, Vivian. You spend it all on a company that just declared bankruptcy on your character." Bradford doesn't know what he just did. He didn't just fire an employee. He pulled the pin on a grenade and put it in his pocket. I swirled my wine. "I don't want a job, Dante. Not yet." He raised an eyebrow. "Oh, you plan to retire? Knit sweaters? Maybe start a podcast?" "No," I smiled, and it was a smile that didn't reach my eyes. It stayed on my lips, sharp and dangerous. "I want to watch them drown first. I want to dismantle the house I built, brick by brick. And then, when there is nothing left but dust and Bradford's tears, maybe we can talk about employment." Dante leaned back, a look of pure delight spreading across his face. He loved this. He lived for this. This was blood sport to him. So he said, pulling out his phone, "Where do we start? Do we poach the staff? Do we underbid their contracts?" "No," I said. "That's too loud. Bradford is paranoid. If he sees you coming, he'll lawyer up. We need to be ghosts. We need to rot the foundation so he doesn't realize the roof is falling until it crushes him." I reached into my bag and pulled out my personal tablet. It wasn't connected to the company servers. I wasn't stupid, but it contained something far more valuable, my brain and my contacts. "I have 3 calls to make," I said. "Just checking in, friendly chats. I won't violate my NDA. I won't say a bad word about Apex. I'll just ask questions. Let silence do the heavy lifting." Dante signaled the waiter again. Bring the bottle, he ordered. Then he looked at me. Who's first, Mr. Takagi, I said. The casino magnate, the one who hates instability. The one whose contract renews in, oh, look at that, 14 days. Dante grinned. I love it when you're evil. I'm not evil, Dante, I said, dialing the number. I'm just efficient. And I'm currently unemployed. I have a lot of free time. The art of corporate sabotage isn't about screaming, it's about whispering. If you scream, you look crazy. If you whisper, people lean in to listen. I sat on that terrace, the Italian moon rising like a silver coin, and I made the calls. First up, Mr. Takagi. He runs 3 of the biggest casinos on the Strip. He's old school. He doesn't sign contracts with companies, he signs contracts with people. He trusted me because I once flew a notary to his yacht in the Mediterranean during a storm to get a deal closed. Vivian-san, his voice boomed. I was told you were on vacation. Why are you working? I'm not working, Mr. Takagi, I said, keeping my voice light, breezy. I'm just enjoying some wine and Amalfi. But well, I wanted to personally apologize. Apologize for what? The tone shifted instantly, from warm to wary. I won't be overseeing your renewal next week, I said. Management has decided to go in a different direction regarding my employment. I just wanted to make sure you were in good hands. Has Bradford reached out? He's enthusiastic. Silence. Long, heavy silence. Bradford? Takagi asked. The boy who wears the sneakers to board meetings? He has a very modern approach, I said. I'm sure he'll explain his vision to you. I just didn't want you to think I abandoned you without saying goodbye. It was sudden. Sudden, Takagi repeated. I see. Thank you, Vivian. Enjoy your wine. Click, I looked at Dante. He's going to call Bradford within 10 minutes. He's going to scream at Bradford, Dante corrected. Next call, Sarah Jenkins, CEO of Verd Tech, a self-made billionaire who hated tech bros with a passion. She worked with me because I was a woman who survived the boys' club. Sarah, I said, how's the IPO prep? Vive, it's hell. I need you to look at the S1 filing drafts this Thursday. I don't trust my lawyers. Ah, Sarah, I can't, I said, injecting a note of genuine regret. I'm no longer with Apex. Effective today. They felt I wasn't a culture fit for the new leadership. Excuse me? Sarah's voice went up an octave. Who the hell is the new leadership? Bradford took over operations, I said. He's bringing in some of his peers to modernize the strategy. It's very fresh. I'm sure you'll love the energy. I don't want energy, Vivian. I want competence. I have an IPO in 3 weeks. Does this Bradford kid know SEC regulations? I can't speak to his qualifications, I said, which is the most damning thing you can say about anyone. But I'm sure he'll do his best. This is a disaster, she muttered. I need to review our termination clause. Page 45. Paragraph C, I said from memory. Performance contingency. Just in case you're an angel, goodbye. Third call, the whale, Arthur P. Sterling, old money, real estate, the kind of guy who owns the land the casinos are built on. He hated change. He hated youth. He hated surprise. Arthur, I said, I'm calling from Italy. Vivian, bring me back some olive oil. I will. Listen, Arthur, I wanted to give you a heads up. My access to your secure files has been revoked. I've been let go. Let go? He sounded like I'd just told him the sun had exploded. Yes, just a shifting of the guard. But don't worry, Bradford is taking personal charge of your portfolio. The sun? Arthur scoffed. The one who tried to sell me NFTs at the Christmas party? He's very forward-thinking. He's an idiot. Vivian, does this trigger the key man clause in our contract? I paused. I let the silence hang there for 3 seconds. You'd have to check with legal, Arthur. But I believe clause 14? B states that if the lead strategist is removed without a 30-day transition period, the client has the right to freeze assets pending a review. Freezing it, Arthur barked. I'm freezing it all. No one touches my money but you. I hung up. I turned to Dante. He was staring at me with something resembling fear and arousal. You didn't just burn the bridge, he said. You convinced the bridge to set itself on fire. Bradford wanted fresh eyes, I said, pouring another glass. I just gave him a fresh perspective on unemployment. Within an hour, my phone started blowing up with notifications. Not from the office, from industry friends. Rumors were flying. Apex is unstable. Apex lost Vivian. Clients are panicking. I imagined Bradford back in Vegas. It was probably 10 o'clock a.m. there. He was probably just walking in with his latte, ready to disrupt the industry. He was about to get disrupted right in the face. The thing about being a lazy employee who actually does everything is that you tend to build systems that only you understand. I didn't do it on purpose to be malicious. I did it because I was the only one who cared enough to organize the chaos. Bradford, in his infinite wisdom, assumed that strategy was just talking smooth in meetings. He didn't realize that strategy is 90% data organization, historical context, and file encryption. Back in Vegas, the sun was high and the temperature was climbing. And so was the panic. I knew exactly what was happening because I knew exactly what Bradford would try to do first: access the gold master file. It's a spreadsheet I built over 5 years. It contains the personal birthdays of every CEO's child, specific Scotch preferences of every board member, the blackmail-worthy secrets we protect for our clients, and the master timelines for every active deal. It lived on a secure cloud drive. My personal cloud drive, which I paid for. When Bradford fired me, he cut off my company email. Standard procedure. But he forgot that the gold master wasn't on the company server. It was shared to the company server from my private account. At 10:15 a.m. Vegas time, I got a notification on my phone. Access request. Bradford Apex has requested access to master strategy do not delete. I swiped left. Deny 2 minutes later. Access request. IT admin has requested access. Deny. Then came the emails to my personal account. From Bradford sent from iPhone subject. Urgent Vivian, we can't open the client files. The password isn't working. Send it over immediately. This is company property. I took a photo of my half-eaten calamari and replied. 2. Bradford subject. Urgent dear Bradford, per our conversation, I am dead weight. Dead weight cannot type passwords. Also, that file resides on my personal intellectual property. Consulting fee to unlock is $5,000 per hour, minimum 40 hours, payable in advance. Best Vive, I showed Dante the phone. He choked on his water. You're holding the data hostage? No, I corrected. I'm protecting my intellectual property. I built that database on weekends, unpaid. If they wanted it, they should have bought it or not fired me. Back at Apex, the walls were closing in. I could picture it. The Takagi renewal was stuck because nobody knew the specific compliance codes for the gaming license, codes I had memorized. Sarah Jenkins was demanding the S1 draft, which was currently a read-only PDF because I held the edit rights. Arthur Sterling's lawyers had likely already served a cease and desist on any movement of funds. My friend Sheila, the receptionist, never underestimate the receptionist. She knows everything, sent me a text via WhatsApp. Sheila, OMG, it's a war zone. Bradford is screaming at it. He threw a stapler. Takaga's assistant just called and canceled the lunch meeting. Bradford is sweating through his vest. Miss you, Zoe, I texted back. Grab some popcorn, honey. It's only Act 1. But the real kicker wasn't the files. It was the performance clause I had mentioned to Sarah. See, I wrote the contracts for our biggest clients. And because I didn't trust the old CEO, and I definitely didn't trust Bradford, I slipped in a tiny clause in the boilerplate text 3 years ago. Clause 17D, continuity of care. In the event that the senior account strategist, V. Miller, is removed from the account for any reason other than gross misconduct or voluntary resignation, the client reserves the right to terminate the contract immediately without penalty and receive a prorated refund of all retainer fees. Bradford had fired me for performance stagnation, not gross misconduct. And I certainly didn't resign. He had just triggered a refund clause for 60% of the company's revenue. I checked my bank account online. Severance pay hadn't hit yet, that was fine. By the time they realized what was happening, they wouldn't have enough cash in the bank to pay for the office coffee, let alone my severance. Dante, I said, looking up from the phone, how much cash reserves does Obsidian have right now? Enough, he said, eyes narrowing. Why? Because I said, watching a fishing boat bob in the harbor. Apex is going to have a liquidity crisis in about 48 hours. They're going to have to refund 3 major retainers. They won't be able to make payroll. Dante stood up. He walked to the edge of the terrace. He looked out at the sea, calculating. If they miss payroll, Dante said slowly, they breach their covenants with the bank. Exactly, I said, and when the bank calls the loan, the company goes into receivership, Dante finished, or they look for a buyer. He turned back to me. The look on his face was pure predatory joy. Vivian, he said, you're terrifying, marry me. I don't date competitors, I said, but I do accept consulting fees. Shall we draft the buyout offer? Every coup needs a lawyer. Mine was Marcus, the general counsel at Apex. Marcus was a man who wore bow ties and hated uncertainty. He had been trying to get Bradford to sign compliance paperwork for 6 months, but Bradford was too busy ideating to sign legal documents. I knew something Bradford didn't. I knew that the board of directors hadn't actually formally ratified Bradford's appointment as COO yet. It was on the agenda for next month. Technically, Bradford was interim COO, and interim COOs do not have the authority to fire senior executives without board approval. I waited until 8 p.m. Italian time, 11 a.m. Vegas, to call Marcus. Vivian, Marcus answered on the first ring. It sounded like he was hiding under a desk. Please tell me this is a nightmare and I'm going to wake up. It's real, Marcus. Bradford fired me while I was eating risotto. He's an idiot, Marcus hissed. He didn't run it by me. I found out when HR sent the ticket. Vivian, Takaga's lawyers just faxed a termination notice. Citing Clause 17D, did you write that clause? I write comprehensive contracts, Marcus. You signed off on them. I didn't think they'd actually fire you. He sighed, a sound of deep existential fatigue. Vivian, we're bleeding out. The refunds? We don't have the liquidity. Bradford spent the reserve cash on the new office renovation. The creative pod with the beanbags, of course he did, I said. Marcus, I have a question. Did the board vote on Bradford's permanent status yet? Silence. Marcus? No, he whispered. The meeting is next week, so I said. My voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. He acted outside his authority. He fired a key executive, triggering massive financial penalties without board approval. That sounds like, what's the legal term? Breach of fiduciary duty? It is, Marcus said. It absolutely is. And if the board finds out that the interim COO just bankrupted the company, They'll remove him, Marcus said, but Vivian, it's too late. The clients are gone. The damage is done. The stock value is going to tank as soon as this leaks. Exactly, I said, which makes it the perfect time for a white knight to swoop in. What are you saying? I'm saying that I'm sitting with a deeply concerned investor who hates to see good companies fail due to bad management. An investor who has the capital to cover the refunds and stabilize the ship. But he would need full control. Marcus paused. Morty, I can neither confirm nor deny, I said. But if an offer were to land on the chairman's desk within the hour, do you think the board would consider it? Consider it? Marcus laughed, a manic, desperate sound. Vivian, if someone offers to save their stock options, they'll personally pack Bradford's bags and throw him out the window. Good, I said. Check your email in 10 minutes. I hung up and looked at Dante. He was already typing on his laptop. The buyout offer was ready. We had drafted it over dessert. It was an insultingly low offer. Pennies on the dollar. But it included a promise to cover the immediate debts and retain the staff. It was a lifeline thrown to a drowning man, but the rope was made of barbed wire. Send it, I said. Dante hit send. The beauty of it was the timing. It was lunchtime in Vegas. The board members were checking their phones. They were seeing the panic. They were seeing the client cancellations. And suddenly, ping, an offer, a way out. Now, I said, pouring the last of the wine, we wait. You know, Dante said, closing his laptop. You're scary, I like it. But what happens to you? Do you come with the furniture? I'm not furniture, Dante, I said. I'm the architect. And if I come back, it's not as an employee, it's as the landlord. The sun began to set on day 4. In Vegas, the storm was raging. Here, the sea was calm. I took a deep breath. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like victory. But the best part was yet to come. I wanted to see the look on Bradford's face. And thanks to modern technology, I was going to get my chance. The emergency board meeting was called for 4:00 p.m. Vegas time. I wasn't invited, obviously. But Marcus, bless his bow-tie-wearing heart, left his phone line open on the conference table. He put it face down, muted, so I could listen. Dante and I sat in his hotel suite, huddled around my iPhone like we were listening to a radio broadcast of the moon landing. Gentlemen and Linda, the chairman's voice boomed. That was Old Man Henderson. He sounded furious. We have lost 30% of our projected annual revenue in 6 hours. Can someone explain to me why our stock is trending on Twitter under the hashtag #ApexFail? It's a temporary setback, Bradford's voice squeaked. He sounded smaller now, less arrogant. Vivian was. She was holding us back. This is just the market adjusting. The market isn't adjusting, you moron, that was Linda. She represented the teacher's pension fund that owned 15% of the company. The market is fleeing. Takagi pulled out, sterling frozen. Jenkins is threatening to sue. You triggered the refund clauses. Did you even read the contracts before you fired the woman who wrote them? I assumed. Bradford stammered. You assumed, Henderson growled. You're an interim COO, Bradford. You don't get to assume. You get to execute orders. And you just executed the company. I can fix it. Bradford yelled, I'll call them. I'll smooth it over. They won't take your calls, Marcus spoke up. His voice was calm, the voice of the executioner. I spoke to Takaga's counsel. They will only deal with Vivian Miller, period. Well, hire her back, Henderson shouted. Give her a raise, give her a pony, I don't care, just get her back. She declined, Marcus said. She said she's enjoying her vacation. However, I squeezed Dante's hand. This was it. However, Marcus continued. We have received a formal acquisition offer. It's aggressive, but it's a cash deal. Immediate liquidity. It covers the refunds and stabilizes the stock. Who is it? Linda asked. Obsidian Global, Marcus said. The room erupted. Morty, the enemy, he'll gut us. He's offering to keep the brand, Marcus lied, well, partially. He guarantees client retention. Because, well, the offer implies that he has secured the cooperation of the key relationships. He is Vivian, Henderson realized aloud. The defeat in his voice was heavy. He got her. The moment you fired her, Bradford, she went to him. It's a hostile takeover. Bradford screamed. You can't do this. My dad built this company. Your dad is in a coma in nursing care, and you just destroyed his legacy, Henderson snapped. You have a fiduciary duty to the shareholders. If we don't take this deal, we're bankrupt by Friday. Do we have a motion? Motion to accept the Obsidian offer, Linda said immediately. Seconded, another voice said, and Henderson added, his voice cold. Motion to terminate Bradford's employment, effective immediately for cause, gross negligence. Seconded, Linda practically shouted. No, you can't. Bradford was crying now, actually crying. I'm the COO, security. Henderson said, escort him out. I heard the heavy doors open. I heard the scuffle of feet. I heard Bradford's muffled protests fading down the hallway. All in favor? The motion carries, Henderson said. Marcus, call Morty. Tell him he owns the place. Dante looked at me. He didn't smile. He just nodded. It was a solemn moment. We had just killed a company and birthed a new empire. Well, Dante said, picking up his phone as it began to ring. I guess I have to go to work. I corrected him. We have to go to work. Right, he said, answering the call. This is Dante. Yes, Marcus, I heard. We accept. Have the papers ready. I'll be there in 12 hours. He hung up. Pack your bags, Vivian. We're going to Vegas. I looked at the Amalfi Coast one last time. It was beautiful. But there was nothing quite as beautiful as the sound of Bradford losing his job. We flew private, obviously. Dante didn't do commercial. And frankly, neither did I anymore. We landed in Las Vegas at 10 o'clock a.m. the next day. The desert heat hit me like a blow dryer, dry and unforgiving. It felt like home. We drove straight to the Apex building. The signage was still up, but everyone knew it was a ghost sign now. The acquisition had hit the news cycle at midnight. Obsidian Global acquires Apex Strategy in shock fire sale. I wore white. A crisp white power suit, sharp enough to cut glass. Dante wore black. We looked like the chess pieces that had just cleared the board. When we walked into the lobby, the security guard, old Frank, dropped his sandwich. "Miss Miller," he stammered, "I thought—" "I'm back, Frank," I said, smiling. "But my badge won't work." "Use the master key." He buzzed us in. The elevator ride was silent. When the doors opened on the 40th floor, the office was dead quiet. People were huddled in cubicles, whispering. Boxes were packed. Vibe was apocalyptic. Then they saw us. Sheila gasped. She stood up behind the reception desk. "Vivian." "Hi, Sheila," I said. "You can unpack. Nobody is getting fired today, except the people who deserve it." A ripple went through the room, relief, confusion, awe. We walked straight to the executive wing. Bradford's office door was open. It was being cleaned out by 2 interns. His vest was still on the coat rack, a sad relic of a failed regime. We walked into the boardroom. The board was there. Henderson, Linda, the rest of them. They looked tired. They looked like they had aged 10 years in 24 hours. When I walked in next to Dante, the air left the room. "Vivian," Henderson said, standing up. He looked ashamed. "We didn't know. You didn't ask," I said simply. "You let a child drive the bus and you're surprised he drove it off a cliff." "We're fixing it," Linda said. "We accepted the deal." "Dante is?" "Well, he's the owner now." Dante stepped forward. He commanded the room without raising his voice. "Apex is now a subsidiary of Obsidian, but it will operate independently under one condition." He gestured to me. "Vivian isn't coming back as senior strategist," Dante said. "She's coming back as president of the Apex division. She has full autonomy. She answers only to me. And frankly, given how you all handled this, I'd suggest you listen to her." I looked at them. These people who had watched me work for 5 years and then let me be fired over the phone. "First order of business," I said, throwing a folder onto the table. "Takagi is back. I texted him from the plane. Sterling is unfreezing the assets. Sarah Jenkins is sending over the S1 for review." The board let out a collective sigh of relief. "Second order of business," I continued. "We're removing the creative pod and putting the desks back. This is a place of business, not a daycare." "Agreed," Henderson said quickly. "And third," I said, leaning on the table, looking each of them in the eye. "If anyone ever questions my energy or calls me lazy again, I won't just leave. I will take every client, every file, and every stapler, and I will start my own firm across the street, and I will bury you so deep you'll need a drilling rig to find sunlight. Do we understand each other?" "Crystal clear," Linda said. She actually smiled. She liked a winner. "Good," I said. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to save again." I walked out of the boardroom. I walked down the hall to my old office. It was exactly as I had left it. My laptop was there. My plant was a little wilted, but alive. I sat down in my chair. It squeaked just a little. Dante leaned in the doorway. "Not bad, Madam President." "It'll do," I said. "You know," he said. "Bradford is apparently trying to sue us for wrongful termination." "Let him," I said, booting up my computer. I have his browser history from the company server. "I don't think he wants that read in court." Dante laughed. "Remind me never to cross you." "Too late," I said. "You already bought me." 3 months later, the merger was complete. Apex was profitable again. In fact, we were up 20%. Turns out, when you remove the nepotism and the fear, people actually work better. Who knew? Bradford had moved to Chelum to become a lifestyle coach. I assume that means he's currently scamming tourists out of money for crystals. Good luck to him. I was in my office, which was now the corner suite that used to belong to the CEO. The view of the strip was incredible. The neon lights flickered below, a sea of bad decisions and lost dreams. I was the shark swimming above it all. My assistant buzzed me. "Vivian, there's a visitor. He doesn't have an appointment." "Who is it?" "It's Mr. Sterling SR, Bradford's father, the old CEO, the man who built the company and then handed it to his idiot son. He had recovered from his health scare. Send him in." The door opened. Robert Sterling walked in. He looked frail, leaning on a cane, but his eyes were still sharp. He looked around the office, his old office. He looked at the new art on the walls. He looked at me behind his desk. "Vivian," he said, his voice raspy. "Robert," I said. I didn't stand up. I didn't owe him that anymore. He sat down in the guest chair. I heard what happened. I was indisposed. When I woke up, the company was sold. My son was in Mexico, and you were sitting here. "Life comes at you fast," I said. "You stole my company," he said. "It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact. I saved your company," I corrected him. "Your son tried to drive it off a cliff. I just grabbed the wheel. The fact that the car now belongs to Obsidian is collateral damage." He stared at me for a long time. "I should have made you CEO 5 years ago." "Yes," I said, "you should have, but you wanted blood. You wanted the name on the door to match yours. That was your mistake, Robert. You confused DNA with competence." He sighed. He looked defeated. "Is there any way to buy it back?" I laughed. A genuine, hearty laugh. "Buy it back, Robert. The valuation has doubled since the acquisition. You can't afford it. And even if you could, Dante wouldn't sell, and neither would I. So that's it?" he asked. 40 years of my life gone. I stood up then. I walked over to the window. I looked out at the city. "It's not gone, Robert. It's just under new management, better management." I turned back to him. You fired me for being lazy. You called me dead weight. Now, I'm the hardest working woman in the city, and I'm too busy to have this conversation. I pressed the intercom button. Sheila, show Mr. Sterling out. I have a strategy call with Takagi in 5 minutes. Robert stood up slowly. He nodded once. A tip of the hat from one killer to another. He walked out. When the door clicked shut, I sat back down. I picked up my pen. I looked at the contract in front of me. It was a new deal, a massive deal, the kind of deal that makes careers. I signed it. My phone buzzed. Text from Dante. Dinner? I found a place that serves wine better than Amalfi. I smiled. I'm buying, I typed back. I got a raise. I put the phone down. I took a sip of my espresso. It was bitter, dark, and perfect. They thought they could throw me away. They thought I was just a cog in the machine. They forgot that I wasn't the cog. I was the mechanic. And when you mess with the mechanic, you don't get to drive the car anymore. I went back to work, after all. I had an empire to run. Funny how some people will throw you out the moment they feel untouchable, then beg you back once the foundation cracks. Vivian didn't raise her voice. She raised the stakes. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's legal, leveraged, and delivered with a smile. Thanks for sticking through the story. More twists coming soon.